So welcome everybody. This is Whitney Kurlan, and I am your program director for Aiken Artists Guild. And we are really excited today to share with you a wonderful photographer from South Africa. Actually, he's from Balato, which is in the KwaZulu-Natal area, which is on the...
Correct.
Okay, good. I think I got that. He is on the southeast coast of South Africa, and he is a wildlife photographer. And he's also with the Photographic Society of South Africa, which is equivalent to our Photographers Association of the United States. So he's a judge with them. He's also part owner in a couple of nature preserves in South Africa. And we were just talking about that a few minutes ago. And he's also been an instructor for teaching rangers how to photograph, and he's also a tracker. And that was, he does that where he's at, and he's also, which is in the country that neighbors him, which is to the northwest, which is Botswana in the Okavango Delta. And if anybody's familiar with African safaris, or they've had an opportunity to watch a program, that area is very rich and generally less disturbed than you would see in Tanzania or Kenya. I hope I have that correct. Anyway, so I kind of wanted to give you a reason as to why we have Tim this month for our guest speaker. Not only are his photographs absolutely amazing, and I hope that there are some people that are interested in photography, and he's going to share with us how he tracks animals, what types of lenses he uses, the difficulty, that that particular environment poses, not only trying to deal with low lights and fast moving animals, but you've also got animals that may want to eat you or trample you. So there's an added excitement rather than just photographing birds here in our local environment. Anyway, so that's why we have Tim today. And the other component to this is there's a current exhibit at the Aiken Center for the Arts, specifically on endangered species, featuring a few artists, including myself. And that's how I kind of met Tim. And so just so you understand how we met, it was through Instagram. And we both kind of, I found his artwork or his photography, and I was really excited about it. And he ended up checking out some of my artwork, and we developed a friendship that way. And he has been generous enough lending me some images to use as reference material, because as you can imagine, not everybody gets an opportunity to go to Africa. And trying to find species specific to that subject matter is, well, he's the authority on it. So we have the opportunity to, collaborate. And I'm lucky enough that he's shared some of the images with me. So I wanted to bring him on board. And thankfully, the one positive thing about the virus is that it's enabled us to think creatively outside the box. We have Zoom. And now we have Tim all the way from South Africa. I think it's terrifically exciting to be able to open up our lives and share that experience. And we're in everybody's home, so there's a real nice personal exchange. So thank you everybody for joining. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the door to Tim, and he can share with us his presentation. We have some really amazing photos that he's shared with us so that we can talk about them and you guys can ask questions. It's really an opportunity to talk with somebody has some really amazing experiences that you don't get a chance to deal with on an everyday basis. So I'm going to open up the floor to Tim. Take it away. Thank you so much.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu. Singibingelela bonke. Ngijabule kakhulu ukukhuluma nawe ebusuku namhlanje. Ngiyabonga. Thank you very much. Now, guys, just so that you think that I'm going to carry on like that all evening, it's not going to happen. That was just a little greeting in the local dialect, or the Zulu dialect, from the royal household. It is the Zulu language, which I grew up speaking before I spoke English, because that's just how I grew up. And I grew up just outside Durban. And I spoke Zulu before I spoke English. My mother could never understand me properly. I don't think she ever did. Even when by the time she died, she couldn't understand me properly, but still. So I still speak quite a lot of Zulu, not as much as I would like. I'm not as fluent as I used to be. I used to speak. You couldn't discern whether it was a white person or a black person talking. Now I still get a pretty good reception with them, but it helps a lot in the country that we have to be able to speak an African language. And Zulu is actually a widely spoken language in Africa because of the history of Shaka. And Shaka was a pioneer in his own right, and he spread fear, and he spread the Zulu kingdom far and wide, getting right up to Zambia, Zimbabwe, and going down as far as the Mzumkulu River and Swaziland and all that. He, at one stage, was basically the king of a hell of a lot of area in that area. So I do speak Zulu to a lot of Africans that we come across, and Yvonne and I travel a lot, and a lot of them have got a grasp of it. Others speak it very well, so it helps us greatly. Anyhow, so I just to give you a little bit of a background. I grew up in Durban. My dad was an attorney. Had nothing to do with farming or wildlife or anything like that. But we lived in a rural area out of town, and I never wore shoes till I was 6. We lived like a farm. We lived on a 4.5 acre small holding, and the properties around us were up to 20 acres in size. So we grew up like little Africans running around barefoot, riding horses bareback, and really behaving like goats. But so that's where I started. My love for wildlife started probably when I was at boarding school. Um, my brother-in-law was the legendary Johnny Ace, who was a ranger in Zambia, who was unfortunately ultimately killed by an elephant in 1973 while conducting a safari in Hwangi, what they used to call Wanky then. So he instilled a lot of the love for wildlife in me, and it just sort of stuck. Being at boarding school, we lived on an estate or farm which had quite a lot of wildlife, so it became natural for us to actually just go out on the weekends and go and run in the bush and go and see birds and that sort of stuff. So that's where my love for the bush started. Um, then, guys, I'm referring to some notes because I've got quite a few. So forgive me if I actually turn my head because it's yes. Now, for those of you who have never been to Africa, and it sounds like none of you ladies have been, so I just like to correct a misconception that we have of a lot of American people who have never been to Africa. America believes that South Africans ride to work every day on the back of a lion or on the back of an elephant and they ride home again. But let me just tell you that's not right. It's absolutely 100% wrong. And the reason is we've had coronavirus here and we got locked down. We don't have any jobs anymore, so we don't ride to work. Anyhow, okay. Jokes aside, yeah, we. I have always had a love for the bush, and fortunately, in the field that I had my own companies. I started when I was very, very young. And we built, I married or I started to go out with a little green, wet behind the ears farm girl that was 17 when she started nursing. She was a very highly, she passed the sort of end of school with very, very high marks and distinction. And they had to get special permission for her to start nursing at the age of 17 and not 18. So she's the one with the brains in the family. I'm just the dude at the back of the bus, pedaling. She's steering the bus.
Lovely.
Come down. You see where it says Durban? See where it says Richards
Yes.
Bay? Just put your cursor somewhere in the middle between those two.
Good job,
Okay.
Suzanne.
Dolphin Coast. There you go. That's us. You got us. Salt Rock's my backyard. There's
Slow
Sharkers Rock. I'll tell you where we are. We are right here. That's us.
Perfect.
Yeah, if you go further north, keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going, or way up north. I'm going to show you where my home base is.
Yeah, that will work.
Oop.
Too far.
Too far. Okay. We're at Richards Bay.
No, we're getting there. Oh, there you go. You see where it says Tlui?
Say that again.
Tlui, Matubatuba. Keep going north. Keep going.
Saint
There it
Lu-
is.
Yeah, it's north of
You
St.
see where
Lucia,
it says
correct?
up at the top?
There it is.
Yeah, we
Right
are.
there.
You see where it says and beyond Pinda Private Game Reserve? Okay, right there. You see where my cursor's going?
Right there.
I can't see your cursor. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I can only see
okay.
mine.
But
Right
you've got your cursor on and beyond Pinda.
Yes.
Pinda are our immediate eastern neighbors. The two properties butt up to one another.
And you are,
And-
if I'm not mistaken, Tim, you're part of And Beyond. Yes?
And Beyond, okay, it's just to give you a little bit of background. And Beyond is an outfitting company that deals with safaris, mainly ecotourism safaris and wildlife. And they've got about 50, 60 destinations all around sub-Saharan Africa and also in India. And they started where Pinda is today. And it was Dave Varty who came down looking for an extension to Londolozi, which you may have heard. Londolozi is a legendary game reserve up on the western side of Kruger National Park. In fact, when Kruger dropped their western fences into that whole zone, running basically from north to south of Kruger. So there are a lot of privately owned properties that get the benefit of the animals moving in and moving out. And Dave came down looking for an extension to that because he needed another kind of terrain and another kind of game area to offer guests, international guests. So you see that little dam? Can I just move your cursor? You see where your cursor is? Move your cursor down. Move your cursor down. Left. You'll see that water there. You see that water?
Yes.
Yes.
That's our main dam. That's on our property.
And the property you're talking about on the Pina Reserve.
It's the whole area now is called the Munyuana.
Munyuana, okay.
The Munyuana is actually a biosphere. And where your cursor was, just where the edge of that little black thing is, just before you get to the corner, just move your cursor up a little. Move it to the left, my left. Down. Now come to this bend. There's the bend on the left. Come to the bend. Yeah, there, exactly where that little tree is in the water.
Right there.
That's exactly where our camp is.
Oh.
And we're 30 meters.
I can see the camp. You can see the camp right there. Yeah.
We're 30 meters from the water. And there you go. We're 30 meters from the water there. That's our camp. That's our camp there. And that's from the building to the edge of the water. You see the water is when it was very low. But now the edge of the green, the light green there to the building is probably 30 meters. That's all.
Wow.
So we often have elephants and all the animals just walking into the camp. We've had elephants actually push us off the patio and make us run inside during lunch before. So,
Now, is that all of those small buildings in that general zone, is that part of all one camp and you,
no, those are
They're all
all little
different camps.
private, those are private share blocks. In
okay,
other words, those are the lodges in the share block. Where you see all those trees surrounded by that one road that goes around. That is essentially, let me just cancel this out. I can't do that. If you look at the road coming down from the top and then runs right, yeah, that road there, roughly that main road running from the causeway at the bottom, all that sort of big enclave there is the share block.
okay.
And then
got it.
our property is from the left. Zucca, I'm also an owner of Zucca, which is 2 farms on the left-hand side.
Okay,
Photography became a way of our life when we decided that we could see friends of ours starting to sell businesses, and we decided that if we didn't have something to occupy our minds as we got older, it would ultimately be our demise. So we decided that photography was probably a good way to go. And in the late 1990s, when digital photography was just starting to make its mark, I decided to get into that. And Yvonne got into the video side of things. We knew nothing. I couldn't even drive a computer in those days, let alone a computer with at least a camera, which was virtually it was a computer with a lens. And but I persisted. I read everything that I could, and we became consumed. And we knew that one day, when we did sell the business, by that time I had my own businesses. By the time we did sell the business, we'd need something to occupy our brain. So photography was a natural decision because it was a fun. It took you to the right places, and then you relived your experiences again behind your computer as you processed your images. So that's how we started out. I got one of the first digital Canon cameras that my first camera. I'll step back. When I still was had my companies, I had a Mavica, little Mavica that operated, Sony Mavica that operated with a floppy disk. Now, maybe I'm looking around at your faces. If I say floppy disk, you probably don't know what the heck I'm talking about. But
No.
floppy disk was it was a storage medium. So you used to take this photograph, stick it in your computer, stick the floppy in your computer, and then all of a sudden there was an image. We didn't know about anything other than the JPEG image that did it. But it gave me an edge over a lot of my competitors because I used to use this to be able to go into the port, check out what was happening on a vessel, check cargo, photograph it, run back to the office, transmit that photograph overseas, and that was great. And I became really popular amongst a lot of foreign companies, including the Japanese. And the Japanese, they scared of Africa, but we managed to convince them that it wasn't all that bad. So anyhow, so when I sold the main company in 2006, and thinking that I would now have a chance that could get around and go and do what I wanted without any pressure and no more drivers, because they nearly drove me insane. I'm actually only 36. This gray hair I got from my drivers, I can tell you. But anyhow, to be of the situation that we can get to the wildlife. Because we live in urban areas, wildlife isn't in urban areas. We've got to get there. And this is where a lot of people misunderstand that you have got to go to what you want to photograph. The wild areas and the wilderness areas are in the areas outside the farmlands, in monkey land, in really wild lands. So that it varies so much in this country that there's so many different things that you can do. So if you want to photograph, let's say, wild dogs, for argument's sake, There are certain places which we know are good for wild dogs, like in the Okavango Delta. There's some amazing wild dog places there, and to target that. So traveling in Africa is all about understanding what you want to do. It's not just going with a camera and shooting anything in front of you. You've got to get there. You've got to look for what you want to cover. Sure, a lot of those places have got just a general run-of-the-mill big five. Some of them have got cheetah, wild dogs, some of them not. Not all game lives off the same habitat. So you've got to follow the habitats to follow the particular, your target species. So if I can just say to anybody who wants to travel to Africa, before you just go to your travel agent and say, I want to go to Africa, I want to see an animal, it's advisable to try and speak to the people who understand. In my travels on Instagram, and especially over this lockdown period for the whole year, we've literally been housebound. I've developed quite an interesting following of Instagram followers, and they vary from all over the world. I've got I like to support wildlife artists, but they've got to be of a certain caliber. And if they're not up to speed, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm a bit of a snob here because my sister was a very, very good, well-known wildlife artist. And if I think their work is good enough, then I'm more than happy to sponsor them. And this is how Whitney and I actually met. I was taken with her work. I was just taken with the way she did it, her understanding of form, her understanding of the movement that in those images or in those paintings. So I contacted her and I said, if you ever need anything, please just drop me a line and let's see if I've got something close to you. I've got an archive now of well over 300,000 images that I've captured over the last 20 years, I guess. I think my earliest images that I can recollect are 2002. So my archives run back 18 years, 19 years. And so that's how we met. That's how I've made it.
Just so you know, Tim, we would love to spend the rest of the evening with a bourbon and enjoying the time with you. But I think because for time factors, we've only got an hour. So we've got about 20 minutes left. And I really want to get to the reason, because we need to talk about some photography. As much as I appreciate the accolades, thank you. Let's, if we can, kind of transition a little bit to how you film in the bush, how you, what type of preparation you do, and if you can kind of give us from a photography, artistic set, you know, how you like try to frame up a shot, just so if we've got people that are interested, we can at least give them some meat and potatoes about photography, if you don't mind.
Okay, no problem. So where we like to go, as you know, we've got various favorites. If we go to Zambia, we drive and we camp. We camp in the South Luangwa game reserve where you camp. We've got a little camper, and the camp has got no fences around it, so you can have any of the animals walk into the camp at any time. Now, because Yvonne and I are both trained rangers, it really doesn't matter to us. We just learn to keep our eyes open. So, but when you go there, if you're going to go by road, you can carry more kit. But if we go to fly into, let's say, the Okavango Delta, to access the Delta, 99% of the time you've got to fly in these little planes. Now, they have restrictions. They have a 20-kilo restriction. Now, I'm not being derogatory about Yvonne's clothing. But, you know, 20 kilos to me is normally one camera bag, and then I've got no space for clothing. I've got to carry it in a paper bag, you know, as if it were my sandwiches. And with Yvonne, she's got stuff like shoes and face creams and all that kind of stuff. So my equipment has now had to be tailored to where I'm going. And in 2017, I'd been shooting Canon for 19 years, and Sony brought out a new camera. It was a mirrorless camera. It mirrorless didn't mean much in my life. So I did some research. When I looked at the specifications and the claims that these things could do, what they said they could do and what I wanted, it became like, it became really, I was now besotted with this. I had to have one, and they weren't available in this country. So I bought photographic equipment from around the world from various people, and I've had friends in Singapore, and I bought from them. And having used this, if you go down to some of the photographs that I've got, especially of those carmine bee eaters, when you shoot a very, very fast moving target like a carmine bee eater, these things don't just fly sedately along. They are crazy, these birds. And they wheel and tumble and do whatever they can get. Okay, that's a wild dog.
Yes. Hold on. No.
Okay.
Is it really? Hold on. I have to go through the photos. I'm sorry.
Okay,
for
sorry
interrupting
about
you,
that. Okay, so anyhow, so this is what attracted me to mirrorless, and I've followed Sony, and Sony to me offer size, cost, efficiency. I'm not a Sony ambassador. They don't pay me. I pay for all my own gear, but there is nothing, as far as I'm concerned, that comes close, especially having carried around the magnificent Canon equipment. When you find a camera that can get the detail of this leopard and the hairs on its nose and that hippo's eye and the iris, etc., you know that you're on a good thing. So I've followed Sony, and I've gone with all their equipment because it's quick, it's fast. You can zoom in as much as you like. There's still detail in that. That's what you call a great camera. And so, as far as I'm concerned, the cameras do a lot of my work for me. And all I've got to do is point it in the right direction. Yeah, sure, you understand things like depth of focus, metering, and all that sort of stuff. But, it's the camera. These two leopards, this is a mom and her cub, 6-month-old cub that we found in Botswana. Sitting under this tree, this was in shadow. And normally you would have to use a flash to get the detail in these cats. But with the electronic viewfinders that these cameras have got, you can preset these things to actually read all that and then shoot it and come away with an image like that. So to me, there's absolutely the future of all photography is mirrorless, the technology of mirrorless.
So
DSLR,
Tim,
yeah.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the mirrorless, because for people that aren't aware of it, you're comparing a mirrorless to a DSLR, which has generally a much bigger lens to capture the zoom on it, whereas a mirrorless, and I think the Sony is a full frame if I'm not mistaken, you can and you've got an electronic viewfinder, so you're instantly looking at the image on the back of the screen on the camera, whereas with a DSLR, you've got to wait to take the photograph and then the image appears, if I'm not mistaken. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. In a nutshell, that's what it is. But what is lovely about mirrorless, and they came out with this EVF is electronic viewfinder, which in other words, if you use your cell phone to take a photograph, you're looking at a live view before you push that button to capture that image. This is exactly what the Sony cameras, or what a mirrorless camera does. Look, everybody's making mirrorless now, so they all operate the same way. But what you can do is you can do all the adjustments live before you even shoot it. And you can make these adjustments. It's no guesswork anymore. And then when you push the button, it's done.
Right. And with the mirrorless, though, you also, it's the reason why you are finding this a more attractive package because of the weight, because the full frame of a mirrorless, the zooms, the zoom lenses that you would typically have with a DSLR were really big, especially for shooting wildlife. You're looking at most of these lenses to get some of these images, because you're usually at a distance, or like 600, a 600 millimeter lens, correct? So with a full frame, you actually are compressing that. I apologize to Sony for not understanding this exactly, but your lenses can be much more compact and smaller, but you're getting 4 times the magnification, or depending upon, you know, what size camera body you're using. But I think for a full frame, you're getting a 4 times magnification, so that 100 millimeter lens is actually doubling as a 400 or 600 millimeter lens, correct?
I think if I could just explain that.
Yeah.
A full frame means that you're getting the same as the original 35 millimeter. In other words, the size of the sensor is what you're going to get. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. If you have what they call a crop sensor, in other words, it's a sensor that's smaller than that original sensor, the original 35 millimeter sensor. In other words, the area on the film which used to receive the light in a DSLR, it's actually smaller than that. So if you go optics wise, there's a certain amount of magnification which takes place. But Sony have now jumped past all that. Their full frame cameras deliver a 1-to-1. But their technology, they've taken DSLR and they've made mincemeat out of it. They have got just the same magnification as the big cameras, but they've got it in half the size and half the weight. So physically, it does the same thing, or technically it does the same thing, but physically it's half.
Right.
And I used to shoot a Canon 1DX Mark II, which was the Rolls Royce, and a 200 to 400 with a built-in 1.4 times converter. That weighed nearly 7 kilos. Now,
yeah, it's a big camera.
Unless you're using a monopod or a tripod, you know, it takes a muscle man. Arnie Schwarzenegger would do well with that camera. But if you're a lady who is sort of a light lady, and she's now wanting to shoot that kind of rig and get that kind of quality and magnification, what are her options? Right. She's got to go and look towards a mirrorless camera because it's lighter. My Canon bag with 4 lenses and 3 bodies used to weigh 26 kilos. My equivalent bag now weighs a little over 13 kilos. Now, wow. That just shows you, that helps me because it means I can travel with clothes now. I don't have to look like a pauper. I don't have to beg for space in Yvonne's case.
Let me just pause for a second. You're 26 kilos just because we're not on that metric.
Multiply by 2.2045, 2.2 times.
Yeah, it's about 57, almost 58 pounds. That's a
Correct.
lot.
And then you divide that in half. That's when you pick that up and stick it in the overhead locker in a little plane. I can tell you something, then you know the difference. And these guys are rigid. When you fly on little planes that are 12-seaters, as we do into the Delta, the guys don't play. If you're a kilo over, they blow you out. You can't take it. You've got to leave something behind. So
poor Yvonne, her shoes have probably been left on the tarmac, right?
Sorry, I beg your pardon?
I said Yvonne's shoes have probably been left on the tarmac.
Well, we've had a few discussions on that point, and you know, because I don't want to wrestle. I don't want to gamble with my sick leave. No. I sort of normally bow down. So Sony was great for me there, but the quality of their stuff, they don't compromise. In fact, they lead quality-wise as good, if not better, than anything else on the market. And anybody who doesn't look at Sony when they're contemplating buying a camera is doing themselves a disservice, to be really, really blunt. And I reiterate, I don't get paid by Sony. I've worked with them. I've done a couple of promotions for them because I know their equipment well. And I do it for no reward at all. I do it just for the fun of it and the love of it.
So, Tim, I wanted to interject something because I'm kind of trying to zoom through these images so people can see some amazing photography as well. But how do you, from an artistic standpoint, because this is obviously we're an art group, so we would love to know from you how you compose a shot, and obviously it's sometimes it's difficult to, you're not setting up a still life, you're actually trying to photograph animals doing what animals do and being in nature. So you're subjected to conditions of the weather, changing light, obviously animals move. So from an artistic standpoint, because I've seen some of your images and they are really breathtaking, especially the elephant where it's got rays of light coming through it. How do you from that composition sense, how do you compose a shot? How do you go into a situation where these situations are constantly changing and affecting what potentially could be a tremendous outcome in a photograph? How do you deal with that? And obviously now that you've changed from carrying a lot of weight, and I'm sure you have a couple of rigs that are set up in a rig, meaning you've got certain camera bodies set up with short and long distance ranges so that you can kind of on the fly adjust to whatever situation happens to be in your view. How do you from an artistic standpoint compose something and create some of these amazing images that you do?
Okay, that's a great question. In my quest, uh, because I've been doing it for so long, my objective is to go out there and get action, like these two birds, these two tawny eagles. Um, while we understand we've got the rule of thirds, we've got the rule of odds, we've got your color wheel where you've got contrasting colors which are part of your composition. We follow pretty much the same kind of composition as you do, the balance, the leading lines, everything that you do, we do. However, you do it at your leisure. You can sit there and sketch it out first.
Totally.
And you've got license to be able to change what doesn't quite suit you. Unfortunately, if you look at birds like this, these two tawny eagles were um, photographed actually squabbling with one another at a wild dog kill.
Oh,
While the dogs were ripping this poor antelope apart, I noticed these things out of the corner of my eye because that's just the way I work. And I suddenly swung my camera across and I thought to myself, my goodness me, this is action. And I just swung it up there. We use a couple of tricks. I use a back button focus mechanism, or method. It means that you keep your thumb down. That camera is hunting all the time. And because these cameras, they refresh, they can follow that action. And all you got to do is keep these two birds within that frame. There's not a hope in heck that you can ever compose that so that the balance is perfect and it lives by the rule of thirds, etc., etc. In wildlife photography, what I get out of it is I've got to shoot what I can get, and I've got to work with what I've been given. And so there are a couple of ways that you can compensate for this, or you can prepare for this, and that is that I travel with always. This is can you see this, guys?
yes. Yep.
Okay. Is it? Have I got it raised in the right place?
Hold
Can
on.
you just show me my?
I'm
so
going to
that
stop screen sharing. Hang on. Go.
Okay.
Can you put him on full?
Okay, that little Mickey Mouse camera.
Sorry.
That is currently Sony's A9 Mark II.
Okay.
Shoots 20 frames a second, and it's 24 megapixels. And this little goodie on the front is a 200 to 600 lens, so it's a 600 millimeter zoom, so it magnifies a lot.
Now, Tim, that zoom on a regular DSLR camera, that would typically be a 200 or 400 millimeter zoom, correct?
No, if it's a full frame DSLR, in other words, also the 35 millimeter here inside.
Yep.
If it's a full frame, it'll still be 600. If it's what they call an APS-C crop sensor,
Okay.
it means there's a magnification factor in there. And Canon, the 1DX Mark II was a full frame. So if you've got a 400 lens, you've got a 400 millimeter lens, and that's it. The difference is that this mirrorless camera has got a magic feature in it where you can crop inside the camera. So I've got it set to a particular button on the right. So if I'm looking, I can crop that sensor. In other words, I can reduce the size of the sensor, which effectively magnifies another 50% more. So I will take that from a 600 millimeter lens to a 900 millimeter lens with a touch of a button. So I can do that in the middle of all the action. The only thing is you then get a smaller size image. But when you're cropping down to 16 megapixels, which is your cropped image, 16 is great. I published on a 3 megapixel camera before. So, you know, everybody thinks that you've got to have big megapixels in your camera to be able to take wildlife and to publish. It's crazy. You don't. A lot of it is hype, but that is one thing. It's convenient. It's quick. You've got to be quick in the way we work. We can work two ways. We can either just trundle along and go through the bush and look and see what's around the next corner, which is very often it's the only way you can do it. Or you can go and target a particular species and sit at a waterhole and wait for it to arrive because you know they come down to drink it in the evening or the early morning. So you decide what you're going to target. But at all times, because it's the bush, you don't know what's out there. It's not scripted. The animals come and go as they please. You don't know if an animal's now going to suddenly chase another one that's drinking. We were sitting at a waterhole in Botswana, and this particular waterhole, and it was a drying up waterhole, and there were 64 crocodiles in a place that was maybe 30 meters by 30 meters, and these are various other shots that I've taken. These last three shots were taken at another waterhole in Kruger Park. But
I was trying to get to the crocodile eating the other crocodile because that was
okay.
amazing photo.
If you can get to that,
yeah, I'm going to go through that one a little bit faster. If there's anything anybody wants to, I mean, these are. I might have to. We'll just pass through that one. There we go. That's that. You want to talk about how big that guy was?
This crocodile, we'd come up on this dam. There was no water around. It was a drying up drought, and we noticed that this dam was about 30 meters. Dam. It was a pond. It was a watering hole. It was about 30 meters by 30 meters, and 64 crocodiles were lined up around the pond. Some of them up to 5 meters in length, and others little guys, maybe a meter long. So they were of all ages, and they were pretty docile. And I noticed that there was a lot of surface movement. And looking closer, we detected that a lot of catfish were now coming up for air. And we decided that rather than keep going through dry bush, we were going to sit around there and wait for the action because it had to happen. And the first action we saw were the crocs eating the catfish, which you saw a little bit earlier on. And that sort of got me ready. I always sit ready. You never know what's coming around the corner. So I always sat with two rigs. I sit with a 200 to 600 on one side on a monopod, and I sit with this. Now I'm sitting with a 70 to 200. So it means I've got a choice of 70 millimeters right up to 600 millimeters that I can turn into 900. So I've got from 70 millimeters long to 900 millimeters long. So I can cover anything that comes in front of me. I've just got to be good enough to swing it and use whichever camera. In this, I saw this particular croc start swimming. And I thought, I wonder what you're going to do. He was lazy. He just swam along and he was just doing a little wiggle. And next thing, he came up to the smaller croc, which was, this big croc was 5 meters odd in length. That's about 16 and
5 meters is about 16 and a half
16 and a half
16 and a half
feet,
feet.
yeah. And this little guy was probably half his length, because he was a bit skinnier, but he was, in length, he weighed much less, but in length, he was about half the size, about 2.5 meters, which is 7'6". And all of a sudden, this big guy just put his jaws over this one's head. Boom. The little guy didn't even know he'd been bitten. He just lay there and thought, well, it's crazy. It went dark for him. And all of a sudden, the two just disappeared under the water. And, when I saw that, I knew action was going to happen. I then sat there. This is just after he'd bitten him.
Wow.
He was adjusting his thing. And you can see there's another crocodile swimming around, trying to get a part of the action. And then they disappeared. And we never saw them for maybe a minute or two. And I was just waiting there. My heart was pumping. I knew action was going to come. I didn't know where. I didn't know whether they were going to come up in the same place or whatever. So I was waiting, finger down, everything set. I checked it through the EVF. So I knew that whatever I was going to get, I could shoot. I didn't even bother to worry about any more settings. And as they broke surface, I just hit the button. And I just hit 20 frames a second for as long as the buffer would go. And then I shot in bursts after that. And that action lasted 3 hours in total.
Wow.
In that 3 hours, I captured just over 3,000 images. And those images were all kinds of things.
So Tim, if I could, I'm going to interrupt you again.
Yeah.
So 2 more questions. So you must have to travel with a couple of backup discs. What do you call it? Thumb drives to keep the cameras fresh, right?
These cameras both have double card slots. So they've got 2 slots for your storage medium. I shoot 128 meg, the fastest write read speed SDXC cards that they produce.
Are you shooting in RAW as well?
I only shoot RAW. I only shoot RAW on its own. I don't shoot RAW in JPEG. I think that's a waste of time. For my purposes, that is. So I will go out there. Normally I carry 10 128 gig cards, and then both cameras have got 2 cards in each. So I've got more than, and I get about, on the 24 megapixel body, I get about 5,000 images, and the other one about 2.5. So
with backup batteries as well, true, right?
I always carry. I carry 6 batteries wherever I go. I've always got some spare batteries in my pocket. These batteries, I very seldom change a battery during a shoot, and I can stay out 3 hours, 4 hours, and always come back, and I've used a portion of the battery. I just pop it on the charger, pick up a couple more fresh batteries, and then go out in the afternoon game drive.
So how I know that there's always some post-production involved in photography. How much do you rely on utilizing Photoshop to edit and work on these photographs? Is there a lot of post-production time?
Yeah, look, it's part of the pleasure. As I said to you earlier on, we go to beautiful places and we come back and I go through my images and I relive that whole experience. It's like living it again. It's the most amazing thing. So I take a lot of time over images. I don't over process. I think that's wrong because it's not natural. I try and create what was naturally seen. I can't always control everything. So as I said, I've got to grab what I can grab. You'll see a lot of these carmine bee eaters capture these insects on the wing. And I managed to track them with these cameras and then capture these things. They fly like the wind, these things, and they're erratic and they're flying too. And
that's crazy. Look at that.
That's crazy, crazy, crazy stuff.
That's
and it's when you can do that, then you can be adventurous. You can try new things. These carmines breed at a particular place This was up in South Luangwa, the last trip we were there. And we caught, there's the biggest male leopard I've ever seen in my entire life. He's at least 50% bigger than anything else I've ever seen. And
This
he
one right
was
here?
smart. Yeah.
This one? Yeah.
This elephant, this is when he finally stopped in. Okay, let's talk about the leopard. This leopard was, he was hunting. As you can see, he's crouching. He was looking at some antelope that were not far off. And I just caught him in that pose. But he then suddenly saw us. He was on the edge of the sort of wooded area and the reeded area. And then he decided to abort.
How do I get
This
that?
Ellie.
There it is. Sorry. I was trying, it jumped on me. I apologize.
Okay. This area, we were in a place called Tembi, which is north of us here in KwaZulu-Natal. Okay. And when I first saw him, we were coming out of the sand forest. It was quite a heavily wooded forest, and the afternoon sun, the afternoon sun was catching him, and he saw us. And this is the one where he stopped in front of the vehicle. This guy was really standing in the front of the vehicle. There were maybe 2 meters to him from the front of our vehicle when he stopped. So if you go back to the other photograph of where we first saw him, no, that's not the same one. Go
That's
back.
all I have.
That one. That's my
okay.
first view. That was shot with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens.
Wow.
And as I saw him, I just picked it up. I always travel prepared. So I got ready for him. I saw it. I just picked it up, and instinctively I just hit the back button, and I just kept my finger down. There were 19 frames from the time that he started there to the time that he stopped 2 meters from the front of the vehicle, kicking sand up at us. There was nothing I could do. And I thought, what was going through my head was, at least my family one day will see how I died.
And what a magnificent death that would have been.
Jesus, I tell you what. But, in 2013, Yvonne and I we just completed our Trails Guide qualifications, which is our postgraduate qualifications to take people on foot in a Big Five area. And we had to get more face-to-face encounters on foot with Big Five. And we went up to an area called Klasiri, which is on the western side of the park. We had a mentor ranger with us who was highly experienced. And between us, we had 65 years of experience in the bush. And I'd had trouble with my Achilles, and we came across a herd of ellies that were ambling down the hill at us, and we'd parked off the road. We could see where the old track was. We parked off that behind a ditch, turned the engine off, sitting quietly, minding our own business. And then all of a sudden, the herd got to within about 30, 40 meters of us. One came at us. She had a mock charge, which I captured everything. I was using a small camera. It was late in the evening. If you look on my website, you will see a picture, the whole sequence and the whole story and the video that this elephant actually came through a second time. She came round, went through the ditch in front of us, and hit us head on. And there was nothing we could do. We could just sit tight and it was like slow motion. It was the most crazy sensation. Our mentor ranger took the video with his cell phone that was balanced on the dashboard. So it's a well taken video clip, and he posted it on YouTube, and there were 6.7 million hits in 5 days.
Wow.
So it just went viral. So it's still there. But wildlife photography is crazy. You've got no time to act. You've got to instinctively. You've got to be there. My personal style is to shoot fast, and I don't mind how many cards I fill. I can get back with 15,000, 20,000 images that I'll go through.
So Tim, I'm going to interrupt again. I apologize. I'm trying to. Yeah. You've got a lot of information to share, and I just want to keep you on track. So I've got a question from Melinda. It says, was the elephant photo taken through a glass windscreen or were you in the open air vehicle?
All the vehicles that we travel in, if we either, I've got my own vehicle, which we lay the windscreen flat so that there's nothing around us. We've got no top. Some of the guys take their front doors off. I don't. I don't like it because I like my knee against the door. Gives me I can be steady. But no, there was no glass. It was we travel in open vehicles, and except when we go to Luangwa, that's in Zambia, northeastern Zambia, because it's so uncrowded. Very often we'll get out of the vehicle and stand next to the vehicle. Unless, of course, there's a herd of elephant there, we don't do that. We just photograph from inside. But I'll never photograph through glass, never.
Okay, does anybody else want to ask any questions? The floor is open.
Guys, if I may just say something, I've got a website. You're welcome to access the website. It's just Tim Driman Photography.co.za. If you've got any questions, you want to write to me, you want to communicate with me, I write very freely, as you no doubt know. I'm always guilty of writing too much. I put far too much information. But it's, I believe that if you're planning to come to do a trip in Africa, you want to know as much as you can. And I'm happy to tell you, I've got nothing to hide. I don't care if you come here and you take better photographs than me. In fact, I've achieved something because I've introduced you to something and you've done it. So I don't have an ego. I've got far too far down the track to have an ego. So I don't really care. And I'm always happy to help. If anyone wants advice, where to go, where's the best place, budget-wise, etc. So that's basically it.
Thank you very, very much. Does anybody else want to ask any questions? I don't want to take up. Tim has graciously stayed awake. It's not that late.
No.
They
It's
are
early
7
here.
hours away. What?
It's early here. It's no problem at all. Guys, if my email address, you can get it at timdriman@iafrica.com.
Let me, let's see if we can figure that out. Do you want to spell that again? It's Tim Driman.
TIMDRIMAN
At
at iAfrica, which
Art
is a little
Africa?
I, and then Africa, iAfrica.
Yep.
.com. That's my email address. I will happily write back to you. Happily give you any information I can get. If I can't get it, I will find out and I will give you some intelligent answers.
Perfect. Well, I really I want to wrap this up because I know we've gone a little bit over our time schedule, but I wanted to ask everybody to absolutely go and visit Tim's website, timdriman.com. And again, as
sorry, the website is Tim Driman Photography.
Sorry.
.co.za. The email address is timdriman@iafrica.com.
Sorry, my bad. Susanna has put a link on our chat so people can to the right email address. My bad. But I wanted to thank everybody for joining us at this unusual hour. And I really wanted to thank Tim. You've got so much information. I know that it's hard to contain yourself into a very short time window. But you are a wealth of information. And I do absolutely appreciate your friendship and extending that gracious offer of sharing your photographs with not just me, but sharing it with the group so that they can see how wonderful and talented you are. And I also wanted to say thank you for extending and opening up your home and talking to us about your amazing, exciting life. I mean, the only thing that we can say around Aiken that is considered the wildlife is maybe a fox and definitely the horse people and the crazy other artists that we all run across because they are definitely a special species unto themselves. But thank you very, very, very much for graciously spending a little over an hour with us and talking to our little group here in Aiken, South Carolina. We extend our home and our welcome to you, and thank you very, very much.
That's so kind of you. Thank you. Thank you everybody for taking time to listen to me. I hope I brought some interesting information to you guys. There is just so much, you know, I don't even know where to start and where to finish. I get carried away because, as you can see, it's a passion of mine. I'm happy to divulge any information, and if I can help, what a pleasure. That's who I am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.